What is the super-blue blood moon? A rare celestial event that hasn't been seen by much of the world in more than 150 years is set to grace the skies on Wednesday. A super-blood blue moon will be visible on 31 January, with Western North America, Asia, the Middle East, Russia and Australia getting the best view of the stunning phenomenon. The event is causing a buzz because it combines three unusual lunar events: an extra big supermoon, a blue moon and a total lunar eclipse. It's the third in a series of supermoons, when the moon is closer to Earth in its orbit, known as perigee, and about 14% brighter and 30% larger than usual. It's also the second full moon of the month, commonly known as a blue moon, which happens every 2 years and 8 months. The super blue moon will pass through Earth's shadow to give viewers in the right location a total lunar eclipse. While the moon is in the Earth's shadow, it will take on a reddish tint, known as a blood moon. Sunlight manages to reach the moon, but first it has to pass through Earth's atmosphere. This makes the sky redder, as it scatters away shorter wavelengths of light, and also bends the path of the light, directing it into the shadow. When and how can you see it? Experts say the best viewing in the US will be from the west. Set your alarm early and go out and take a look, said Gordon Johnston, program executive and lunar blogger at NASA headquarters in Washington. Weather permitting, the West Coast, Alaska and Hawaii will have a spectacular view of totality from start to finish. Unfortunately, eclipse viewing will be more challenging in the Eastern time zone. The eclipse begins at 5:51 AM Eastern Standard Time, 10:51 GMT, as the moon is about to set in the western sky, and the sky is getting lighter in the east. For people viewing the event from New York or Washington, the moon will enter the outer part of Earth's shadow at 5:51 AM, 10:51 GMT, but will hardly be noticeable. The darker part of Earth's shadow will begin to blanket part of the moon with a reddish tint at 6:48 AM Eastern Standard Time, 11:48 GMT, but the moon will set less than a half hour later. So your best opportunity, if you live in the east, is to head outside about 6:45 AM. And get to a high place to watch the start of the eclipse. Make sure you have a clear line of sight to the horizon in the west-northwest, opposite from where the sun will rise, said Dr. Johnston. If you live in the central time zone, viewing will be better, since the action begins when the moon is higher in the western sky. By about 6:15 AM Central Standard Time, 12:15 GMT, 7:15 Eastern Standard Time, the Earth's reddish shadow will be clearly noticeable on the moon. The eclipse will be harder to see in the lightening pre-dawn sky, and the moon will set after 7 a.m., 1300 hours GMT, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, as the sun rises. In the Rocky Mountain region, the show begins as the umbra touches the edge of the moon at 4:48 AM Mountain Standard Time, 11:48 GMT, 6:48 Eastern Standard Time. The peak of the blood moon eclipse is at about 6:30 a.m., 13:30 GMT, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, local time, and the moon will set shortly after 7 a.m., 1400 hours GMT, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Californians and viewers in Western Canada will be treated to the total eclipse phase from start to finish, though the penumbral shadow will pass after the moon has set. The umbral eclipse begins at 3:48 a.m. Pacific Time, 11:48 GMT, 6:48 Eastern Standard Time. At 4:51 a.m., 12:51 GMT, 7:48 Eastern Standard Time, totality will begin, with best viewing between about 5 o'clock and 6 a.m. local time. The totality phase ends about 6:05 a.m., 14:05 GMT, 9:05 Eastern Standard Time. Weather permitting, eclipse fans in Hawaii will experience the lunar eclipse from start to finish, as will sky watchers in Alaska, Australia and Eastern Asia. In the UK, the moonrise will occur sometime around 4:55 p.m. GMT. The UT of the lunar eclipse will not begin until halfway through the night when the moon passed, though the Earth's shadow. The partial eclipse is expected to begin around 11:48 a.m. GMT, before reaching its peak at 1:29 p.m. GMT. Unlike a solar eclipse, this lunar eclipse can be safely viewed without protective eyewear. For anyone unable to watch the event, it will be streamed online. How rare is it? While people in the Eastern Hemisphere saw their last full moon total lunar eclipse in 1982, for the Western Hemisphere, this eclipse will be the first full moon total eclipse since 1866. This information will help them understand characteristics of the regolith, the mixture of soil and loose rocks on the surface, and how it changes over time. The whole character of the moon changes when we observe with a thermal camera during an eclipse, said Paul Hain of the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics at the University of Colorado Boulder. In the dark, many familiar craters and other features can't be seen, and the normally nondescript areas around some craters start to glow, because the rocks there are still warm. Normally, the transitions into and out of darkness and the temperature changes that go with them are spread over the course of a lunar day, 29.5 days. During a lunar eclipse, the temperature swing is so dramatic that it's as if the surface of the moon goes from being in an oven to being in a freezer in just a few hours, said Noah Petro, deputy project scientist for NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO, at Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. From the Haleakala Observatory on the island of Maui in Hawaii, the team will conduct their investigations at invisible wavelengths where heat is sensed. They've done this kind of study a few times already, singling out individual lunar locations to see how well they retain warmth throughout the eclipse. How quickly or slowly the surface loses heat depends on the sizes of the rocks and the characteristics of the material, including its composition, how porous it is, and how fluffy it is. By comparing the two types of observations, the team is able to look at variations in particular areas, say, the lunar swirls at Rhino Gamma, or an impact crater and the loose debris around it. This kind of information is useful for practical purposes such as scouting out suitable landing sites. It also helps researchers understand the evolution of the surface of the moon. These studies will help us tell the story of how impacts large and small are changing the surface of the moon over geological time, said Dr. Petro.